You think Meg Whitman is the next Ronald Reagan? According to Dick Cheney, she is. Reagan did a lot for our state and country and is revered by Republicans and Democrats alike. Former vice president endorsed Whitman yesterday and said she can do for California what Reagan did for the United States. Cheney also ripped Steve Poizner, saying Whitman's the right candidate for our state. Does this endorsement help Whitman, or is this comparison outlandish, Ron?
Well, you know, I haven't seen any evidence that Meg Whitman is anything like Ronald Reagan, but it could be Dick Cheney, something like Spiro Agnew. You know, I mean, this is so ridiculous. He's one of the most reviled figures in the country, a dark and secretive man who we sort of perceive as living in a bunker somewhere. His endorsement might help her running against Poizner for the nomination, but it's the kiss of death running against Jerry Brown, and I don't think you'll hear a lot about him after June 8th in the primary, should she win. He's not the figure to bring Californians aboard Whitman's campaign, which does raise some serious issues and could be a serious competition for Brown, given the antipathy to Sacramento and everything that's gone on there.
Well, I don't know, Deb. What do you think here? I'm wondering if an endorsement sometimes does more harm than good.
It does more harm than good. It absolutely does, especially when it comes to Vice President or former Vice President Dick Cheney, who does not have a great reputation in this country and what he did in his administration. Not at all. And it is a hindrance. But at the same time, the biggest hindrance, I think, for me, that I always get cautious of is something that I look at in general, which is rich Republicans also taking office again. And she's been a woman of privilege for so many years in her political career, and even over at Disney.
Hey, Deb, what are you upset about? They're rich or Republican?
Both.
What are you upset about that for? Why are you upset about that?
Americans, both. Rich Republicans and affluent Americans being in political power always makes me on edge. It always makes me on edge because everything that you've earned came at a price money-wise.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
Jerry Brown's done okay with his father's wealth that he inherited, a lot of it coming from Indonesian oil
Jerry
deals.
Brown is, we also know, if we had to look at the basic journal of who Jerry Brown is, we also know that Jerry Brown is of the people and for the people. Always has been. Always has been. Meg Whitman, her background is the corporate world to begin with. So I'm always leery of people who have that corporate background.
No, I respect that, Deb, but, I mean, given the situation in the country right now, maybe you need someone with a corporate background, or at least in the state of California, to try and turn the state's financial mess around.
And how many times have we had that happen to a dismay of the budget? And I'll give you a prime example. We decided to vote someone in office like an Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Right.
He's more of a figurehead than anything else. And even though he doesn't come from the most affluent of backgrounds, he's married to an affluent woman. And we bought into it simply because he had a higher personality rate than somebody else. Is he a great governor?
I don't think anybody would go out on a limb and say he was.
That's my point. We have a tendency to vote based on a certain amount of affluence, whether it's Hollywood affluence or political affluence based on money.
Okay. Well, we could continue this for a while. We got to move on here. Let's go. What do you think about this? Are some men hardwired to cheat? A Swedish scientific study aims to determine what makes for a happy marriage. Within the study is the idea that some men are genetically predisposed toward a greater likelihood of infidelity. Basically, that means they can't help it. It's simply the way it is. You buy that? Think it's possible that some men are hardwired to cheat? Or is someone just trying to give certain men an excuse, Deborah?
I think part of it is an excuse. But I think it's a lot more complicated than that as well. I don't think men are necessarily hardwired, but I do think there is a DNA process in the Homo sapien itself that there is the need to procreate. And you'll notice that same hardwiring or that same genetic predisposition in a lot of mammals who need to procreate. It's about propagating the species. Understandable. But I also think this is not a question of nurture versus nature, but nurture and nature. If a man or if a young man is raised in an environment that says that this is okay to do this and allows himself to do this, every choice that he makes will be to get away with it simply because it is a sexual choice as well. I think there are many men that don't cheat. I know personally many men that don't cheat, that are in love with their wives, they're in love with their girlfriends, and when things hit the fan, they leave, they fix it, they get out, or they do what they have to do. But I know many men that don't cheat. I don't think men are hardwired, but I do think the species has a DNA and genetic process to propagate the species.
Ron, is that in your DNA?
I don't believe in that kind of stuff. They make up all this stuff to give us excuses. It's only guys who cheat? I mean, give me a break. I'd like to try that on my wife. Look, honey, I didn't really mean to do it, but what can I do? I got this, cheating gene. I mean, this is the most absurd kind of self-justifying study. I can only assume that it's a bunch of guys who came up with this. It's ridiculous. And I don't know about you, but I don't think people cheat out of a sense of propagating the species as much as having a little fun and not having a loving relationship that bonds them together and gives them commitment. Commitment doesn't come out of your genetic makeup. It comes out of your commitment to the other person, your loving and caring nature, and your willingness to really make a relationship work and to work hard at enduring it. People make mistakes, but blaming your genetic makeup is a bit over the top.
All right. And with that, we're out of time. Ron and Deborah, nice job tonight. I'll talk to you guys next week. Thanks.
Good night.
Thanks, and don't cheat.
Don't worry. Don't worry.